Welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical. Today I've got something really great for you guys. I'm sure you've noticed the hypocrisy of the anti-gunners and the way that they want to try to use facts against us. For one thing, they try to say that the Second Amendment is outdated and that it only applied to like muskets and not to modern weapon systems. But for two, they want to actually try to use the words of the Second Amendment against us, saying that it doesn't apply to individuals' rights to keep and bear arms. And now that we know that with the Bruen decision that it does apply to an individual's rights to keep and bear arms constitutionally, we've got a lot going for us. And it applies to this article very well. The article is titled, Fact Check. Militia law in 1792 included minimum weapon requirements but no maximums. And it's a short article, but it makes a lot of good points. Before we get started, I just want to thank everyone that subscribed to the channel. I appreciate you guys a lot. So I think this article is great for a few reasons. One of them is that it's a fact check in our favor for once. You know how they always use fact checking on social media to basically suppress any idea that isn't leftist craziness? Well, this time it's actually truly a fact check on something that was posted that is not true, that is leftist craziness. So let's get started here. Like I said, the article is titled Fact Check. Militia law in 1792 included minimum weapon requirements but no maximums. The claim. The Second Amendment reference to a well-regulated militia was limited in 1791 to 1 musket and 24 bullets. So that's what they are trying to claim, is that now with the Bruen decision, we have to look at text, history, and tradition only to see if any gun control laws are in fact constitutional. They have to go along with what was the law at the time that the Second Amendment was put into place. So these guys are trying to say that at that time, there was this limit on what you were allowed to own as far as firearms and ammunition goes. But as we're going to see, that's really not the case. In fact, it's quite the opposite. After mass shootings this year in Buffalo, New York and Uvalde, Texas, many turned to social media to advocate for gun control. Some users argued for weapons limitations to be implemented. A June 4th Facebook post claimed a well-regulated militia, the term used in the Second Amendment's reference to the right to bear arms, included a limitation on the number of weapons militiamen could have in 1791. The post accrued more than 100 shares in a month. This is what the post said. Did you know in 1791, when the founders ratified the 2A, a well-regulated militia was restricted to 1 musket, 2 spare flints, and 24 bullets, read the post. And now these kinds of posts gain tons of traction, whether they're true or not, because people, they want to believe what they already believe. They want to see things that are going to tell them that what they believe is right. Commenters seized on the claim to assert that the Second Amendment is outdated. And that's their other thing that they're always trying to do. The Second Amendment was only about muskets. They couldn't have had any idea back then that, that technology would advance and that we would have semi-automatic rifles and stuff like that, which is absolutely ridiculous. But the limitations described in the post are not accurate. The figures cited were minimum requirements for militia members, not maximums, according to an expert. The post also gets the timeline wrong. The Second Amendment was ratified in 1791, but the federal law on militia armaments didn't pass until a year later. The user who shared the post provided no evidence it was true in a response to USA Today. Because there is no evidence that it's true. How could they? Reference appears to originate from Militia Act of 1792. Around the time the Second Amendment was ratified, there was not a law that set a maximum amount of arms or ammunition that an individual could possess, as the Facebook post claims, said David Koppel, a firearms policy and constitutional law expert who works as research director on the Independence Institute. But there were laws that established a minimum level of equipment required for militiamen. Koppel said there were also minimum requirements for men who are too old to serve in the militia or female heads of households, he said. So that basically includes everybody that is trying to be prepared for home defense. They had a minimum level of weapons that you had to own in order to keep your home, your property, your family safe. The mention of specific weapons requirements in the Facebook post was presumably referring to the Uniform Militia Act, legislation enacted by Congress in 1792 that set these minimum requirements. It states in part, every citizen so enrolled and notified shall, within 6 months thereafter, provide himself with a good musket or firelock, a sufficient bayonet and belt, 2 spare flints, a knapsack, a pouch with a box therein, to contain not less than 24 cartridges, suited to the bore of his musket or firelock, each cartridge to contain a proper quantity of powder and ball, or with a good rifle, knapsack, shot pouch, and powder horn, 20 balls suited to the bore of his rifle, and 1/4 pound of powder. So, accounting for technology, for the changes in equipment that we have today, that's basically saying that you have to have something like this, and enough ammunition, and enough magazines to be able to be well armed, to be able to protect your home, your family, your property, and your life. Right? This just goes along with Bruen really well. The laws at the time set minimum requirements for households to have to keep themselves safe. Sounds good to me. According to Koppel, the Uniform Militia Act was the first federal law to have minimum requirements. Before 1792, states and colonies had their own laws, but even those were minimums, not maximums, as the Facebook post claims. So again, Bruen, for any gun law has to go along with what was in place at the time of the Second Amendment. And what was in place then was minimum requirements of weapons ownership to be sufficiently prepared. So, really, that means that everyone these days should be sufficiently prepared. Have a good go-to carbine, a go-to pistol, have enough ammunition for both. And in fact, have backups and backups just in case. And make sure that they're well equipped, have good sights on them, have a good weapon mounted light. All this stuff, this is the modern day equivalent of what they put into place in 1792. Check your fact also debunked the claim. Our rating, false. Based on our research, we rate false the claim that the Second Amendment reference to a well-regulated militia was limited in 1791 to 1 musket and 24 bullets. That number of muskets and bullets matches the Uniform Militia Act of 1972? 1792. There's a typo on here. Which passed a year after the claim asserts. But more significantly, this legislation established nationwide minimums, not maximums, for militia weaponry. So that's the entire article, and what it says to me is that if we are to go along with what was the law at the time that the Second Amendment was ratified, that means that there are minimums of modern weapon systems that each household should have, should own, and should have ready just in case, right? And I wholeheartedly believe that. Now, if you are totally against guns and you don't trust yourself with a firearm, well, apparently that is your decision. Although if you were around in the time that the Second Amendment was written, you would have to get yourself acquainted with a musket, a flintlock, whatever, so that you were able to protect your home and your family. Well, these days, a lot of people don't believe in being self-sufficient. They think that they need to rely on the government to take care of them, to protect them. Well, I don't believe in that. I believe in, being responsible for your own household. And that means having minimum weapon systems and sufficient ammunition and gear to be able to support those weapon systems, and to go out and practice and be effective with your weapon systems, whether that be AR, AK, handguns, whatever you feel is appropriate for you, whatever you are the most effective with, but practice with it, train, stockpile ammunition. I know stockpile isn't a word that they really like, but make sure to keep enough ammunition so that you can train, but also be prepared if and when you may need to use your weapons. Hopefully that day never comes and you could just have a lot of fun range time. That's the ideal situation. But the real point of this stuff is, in case you do ever have to use it, that you will be prepared. And the founding fathers, that was their whole idea, is to be prepared. They had just gone through a horrible, violent war to become a free country. And they were thinking ahead of, every citizen needed to be able to defend themselves. And that hasn't changed. Just because a lot of time has passed, the world is a different place now. But you never know what might happen. And so, why not be prepared? It only makes sense to me. And as long as you are safe with your firearms, you learn how to use them well, effectively, and safely, why would you not want to have them? It's like not having a fire extinguisher or not having seatbelts on your car. You hope that you never have to use those things, but it only makes sense to have them just in case. And I believe the same with firearms. And besides all that, they're just a lot of fun anyway. I think most people that are afraid of them, if they actually started getting acquainted with them, they would realize that there's nothing to fear. Yes, they are very dangerous if misused, but they are very safe if used responsibly. Am I right? Or am I right? I'm right. This is my go-to bedside pistol. My go-to home defense carbine. I have these ready at all times, as you should too. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. Please share this with your friends and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this. Do you have a minimum weapons requirement for your household? What do you like to keep at the ready? I would love to know. So please let me know, and please subscribe to Sawtooth Tactical. Love you guys. From Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.